spiritual warfare. Sometimes, the quietest seasons are the most heavily monitored ones. While you were trying to understand why everyone suddenly felt bold enough to come for you, God was sitting front row, observing every lie, every betrayal, every sneaky plot, every fake apology, every coward who stayed neutral, even though they saw you getting spiritually jumped. And the wildest part? Not a single one of them realized they were being recorded by the judge they swore they believed in. Let's keep it real. Your life became a whole episode of let's see who exposes themselves today. People who claimed to love you watched the attacks land and said nothing. People who claimed to respect you let the narratives run because silence is cheaper than accountability. And the ones who secretly wanted your downfall? Oh, they were front row with popcorn, feet up, smiling like your pain was their personal entertainment subscription. But here's the fact that makes this story hit differently. Behavioral psychologists say the truest form of a person's character is revealed not by what they do when they're in power, but by what they choose when someone else is vulnerable. And in your vulnerable season, everybody's true nature walked out barefaced. Some stayed loyal, some stayed neutral, but many stayed silent, and silence is a choice with consequences. God watched it all. Not because he needed evidence, he already knew who was who. He watched because you needed to stop overestimating people he was already planning to remove. He watched because their attack was the very thing that would justify your elevation. He watched because every insult, every setup, every smear, every betrayal.
And how do you find a virtual assistant? You can hire these people in the Philippines for $5 an hour.
The people in the Philippines. Chosen one. This message you are about.
Needed evidence, he already knew who was who. He watched because you needed to stop overestimating people he was already planning to remove. He watched because their attack was the very thing that would justify your elevation. He watched because every insult, every setup, every smear, every betrayal was building the case for your comeback, one they wouldn't be allowed to deny when the tables flipped. And trust me, those tables, they're not just turning, they're rotating like a ceiling fan in Lagos during hot season. So buckle in, because the same people who watched you fall without blinking are about to watch you rise without explanation. And this time, God isn't just stepping in, he's settling accounts. Number one, God let them
Here's everything, clearly laid out, so you finally see what DCJ NSW is. Below is a safe, legally appropriate, forceful, and protective letter that communicates your real-world grievances without reproducing or legitimizing any allegation that could expose you legally. It tells your truth without defamation, protects your safety, and keeps the focus on documentable misconduct, neglect, duty of care failures, and risks to life. You can send this as is. Draft letter to Bayday for immediate delivery. Safe, lawful, and protective. Subject, formal notice. Misrepresentation, dereliction of duty, and exposure to serious harm. Bayday, I am writing to formally notify you of the serious consequences of your conduct toward me while representing yourself as an NDIS-related worker or service provider. You presented yourself as an NDIS provider despite no verifiable ABN, no organizational identity, no service agreement, no safeguarding framework, and no compliance documentation under the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission. Your representation created a reasonable belief that you were authorized to act in a support capacity under the NDIS. Acting in that role, you, 1, abandoned me while I was homeless, medically vulnerable, and in crisis, despite knowing I had no...
reveal themselves. Because exposure was safer than your loyalty. You kept
Is HubSpot Smart CRM myth or magic? Let me show you the potential of our free tools and transform your business without spending money.
What you just did, what you just pulled off, shouldn't even be possible for a human being. Not a soldier, not a saint, not a scholar, not a demon, but you. And here's the part nobody is ready to say out loud. You didn't just break a rule, you broke the physics holding that rule in place. All because you did the one thing nobody expected. You stopped playing within the boundaries they built.
Turn off the light. And listen closely. There's a pulse underneath everything tonight. A quiet thunder humming beneath the surface of your thoughts. You feel it, don't you? That subtle tightening in the air, that shift in the atmosphere that makes your skin prickle like someone just whispered a secret directly into your bloodstream. The world is behaving strangely, almost as if something invisible tilted its axis just a few degrees, and deep inside, you already know the truth. That tilt has everything to do with you. Because somewhere in the high towers of influence, behind closed doors and frosted glass, a symbolic number has been stamped onto your existence. 50 million. Not in currency, no. Money is too small a vessel to carry what you represent. It's a valuation, a measurement, a desperate attempt to quantify what they cannot control. They call it a bounty because they lack the vocabulary to describe the panic you've ignited. But you and I both know it's not a target. It's a confession. The world doesn't place a symbolic 50 million price tag on silence. It places it on disruptions, on anomalies, on forces so unpredictable that institutions can feel their old blueprints dissolving just by whispering your name. And whisper it they do, not out of admiration, out of necessity, out of fear, out of fascination, out of that deep, instinctive recognition that you've stepped out of the predictable linear script they wrote for you. You've done something far more destabilizing than breaking rules. You've exposed them. You didn't challenge the hierarchy with fists or fire. You challenged it with your existence, your unpredictability, your refusal to shrink yourself into a box with a neat label. And that alone has shaken their order more violently than any rebellion could. Picture it, a room full of analysts, experts, strategists, advisors, people who made careers pretending they understand everything hunched over glowing screens, replaying your movements like they're decoding encrypted transmissions. They analyze your silences, your pauses, the way your eyes shift, the rhythm of your breathing. They don't study you because you're dangerous. They study you because you're unclassifiable. And nothing terrifies a system more than something it can't categorize. They write reports layered with jargon, graphs, psychological theories, and still they can't predict your next step. That unpredictability is your rebellion. That unknowability is your revolution. Meanwhile, the critics sharpen their tongues like symbolic blades. They disguise themselves as commentators, skeptics, opportunists, each trying to capture you through narrative, through opinion, through distortion. They think if they can define you, they can contain you. If they can label you, they can limit you. If they can criticize you loud enough, they can drown you out. But every attempt to hold you still only makes your shadow stretch wider. Because you don't fight them, you don't argue, you don't defend. And that silence, your silence, is the greatest psychological strike they've ever suffered. To them, your silence is not emptiness, it's resistance, it's defiance. It's evidence that their frameworks, their rules, their logic are flimsy when confronted by someone who doesn't play the game they designed, so they escalate. They amplify the symbolic bounty to 50 million, hoping someone, somewhere, can capture you. But who are these hunters they're calling? Not assassins in the literal sense, no. In this psychological battlefield, hunters are the opinion chasers, the gossip spreaders, the narrative manipulators, the opportunists who salivate at the chance to exploit your rising myth. They come at you through microphones, through comments, through headlines, through half-truths, through artificial narratives crafted in panic rooms. They aim not to harm you physically, but to pin you down with interpretations, to reduce your complexity to a headline, to shrink your presence into a trope. But every time they try to dissect you, they cut themselves instead. Because in their desperation to expose you, they expose their own motives, envy, insecurity, obsession, fear. They reveal how threatened they are by anyone who refuses to live as a predictable footnote. And while they scramble, the people whisper. Whispers turn to conversations. Conversations turn to debates. Debates turn to fascination. Your name becomes a cultural tremor that shakes across cities, families, social circles. Some admire you, some resent you, some try to imitate you. But all of them, every last one, feels the vibration of your presence humming under the surface of their day. It spreads like resonance, a sound that wasn't supposed to echo this far, but refuses to stop traveling. The media catches on. They magnify you. They twist you. They glorify you. They distort you. They argue about you with such intensity that it becomes obvious they're not trying to understand you. They're trying to survive you. Because the moment a person becomes too influential to ignore, the world rearranges itself around them. And that is what you've done. You've become rearrangement. You've become cultural gravity. You've become the tremor beneath their narratives. You've become the shadow they can't outrun. And the symbolic 50 million, that number is less about your worth and more about their fear. It's the world's way of admitting, we cannot contain this, we cannot predict this, we cannot control this. They think the number defines you, they don't realize it defines them. Because what kind of system slaps a 50 million symbolic value on a person just for existing outside the script? A system on the edge, a system terrified of collapse, a system painfully aware that one unpredictable individual is enough to expose decades of illusion. And every time someone tries to capture your essence, whether through criticism, imitation, manipulation, or intellectual deconstruction, they fail. And their failure becomes another chapter in your myth. That's why your reputation has grown beyond your own actions. It has become self-sustaining. You don't spread yourself, they spread you. Every attempt to minimize you becomes an advertisement. Every attempt to contain you becomes momentum.
Demand for the incredible mushroom known as lion's mane has gone crazy over the last few years, and with that, a whole lot of sellers have popped up. In fact, it feels like there's a new one every day. And what a lot of people don't realize is all these sellers sell the same or extremely similar products. And what that is an imported extract.
Every attempt to silence you becomes a megaphone. You've become the idea they can't bury, the question they can't answer, the variable they can't solve, the mirror they can't face. And here's the most poetic part. You didn't choose this. You didn't crown yourself. You didn't ask for the symbolic bounty. It was placed on you because the world needed a symbol for everything it fears and everything it envies.
If you were born before 1979, have you ever felt like an invisible force was stopping you from achieving?
Chosen one, hear me. The moment you pulled truth into the open, something vast and threatened began to move against you. Not with honesty, not with justice, but with the heavy machinery of those who depend on shadows to survive. You exposed the fault lines beneath their polished surfaces, and now they reach. For every tool they possess, not to challenge your evidence, but to fracture your name, to paint your presence as the problem rather than the revelation. This wave rising against you is not chaos. It is a coordinated design. It carries the fingerprints of institutions that have long trained themselves to protect illusion. When light uncovers what they buried, they do not repent, they invert. They twist the frame so the revealer appears as the threat. So the one who dared to unveil becomes the one they now accuse. You felt that shift the moment it happened. One day you were simply telling what you saw. The next, you were cast as the danger that must be neutralized. Their guilt becomes your label. Their actions become your accusation. And the public eye, fed by narratives crafted in dim rooms, turns your courage into a caricature. But chosen one, listen closely. What rises against you is not your downfall. It is the signpost that you touch the nerve they guard most fiercely. Every distorted story, every whispered doubt, every synchronized attempt to bury your voice carries a strange confirmation. Woven inside it, you revealed what was never meant to be seen. This moment is not random. It is ancient. It is spiritual. The pressure surrounding you is the proof that you shook something old and deeply rooted in systems desperate to maintain their fiction. And though they try to drown your voice beneath their noise, they do not understand what this fire is doing to you. It is not breaking you. It is forging you into someone they will no longer be a. Able to touch. They believed that forging you would finish you, chosen one. Yet it is from that very forge that your next revelation rises. What they mistook as the heat of your destruction has become the heat of your awakening. And from that fire, we step into the deeper architecture of the machine that now moves against you. Because the force confronting you is not a single voice, nor a single hand, but a structure patterned to protect itself at all costs. It behaves less like an organization and more like a living organism, one that senses threat, calculates risk, and deploys responses with mechanical precision. It is a network built from human decisions, yet powered by something colder, older, and entirely invested in maintaining the illusion of its own benevolence. This is the anatomy of the machine. It begins with perception, not truth perception. Systems of influence discovered long ago that if they could control what people feel, they would not need to control what people think. Feelings move faster than logic. Feelings bypass inquiry. So the machine works through emotion first. It frames your name with tension. It surrounds your presence with fear. It attaches your image to unease. And once the emotional groundwork is laid, the narrative becomes easy to engineer. Next comes repetition. A story told once is a rumor. A story told twice is suspicion. A story told everywhere becomes a reality people accept without ever examining. And so the machine echoes itself across its branches, broadcasts, commentaries, panels, social feeds, each voice pretending to be independent, while all sing from the same script.
If you want to make passive income online, I'd like to pay you $5,000 to $10,000 a month to help my agency, Veritas Digital, generate digital.
Their unity is not accidental. It is survival instinct disguised as consensus. After repetition comes escalation. They begin with soft doubt. Something seems off about you. Then subtle reframing. Your motivations appear questionable. Then harsher tones, you cannot be trusted. And once enough tension has been cultivated, the shift happens. They move from challenging your claims to challenging your humanity. Because once a person is reduced to an image, the machine can do anything to them without losing the approval of the crowd. This entire process runs on a simple truth. People trust the story that arrives first, even if it is false, and they fear the story that asks them to question the world they rely on. The machine counts on this. It calculates that the average person prefers a comfortable lie over a destabilizing truth. It knows that complexity exhausts, while certainty soothes. So it offers certainty shaped, polished, and weaponized. But chosen one, the part they never accounted for, is the one standing before me now. Someone who sees through their choreography. Someone who recognizes that this machine behaves like a cornered creature. Someone who is no longer intimidated by the volume of its voice or the size of its shadow. Because when you understand the structure, you stop being controlled by its spectacle. You notice how narratives release on schedule. You sense how outrage is manufactured. You see how experts appear when convenient and disappear when challenged. You realize that what looks like a tidal wave is often just a small circle of rooms amplifying itself through louder and louder mirrors. And once you see that, the fear they hope to awaken in you becomes the fear awakened in them. Because systems built on illusion cannot withstand someone who no longer bows to illusion. And here is where your journey deepens once the mechanics of the machine become visible to you. Its intimidation loses power. You begin to move differently, not reactively, not defensively, but with the calm precision of someone who understands the battlefield beneath the noise. You were meant to see this. You were meant to understand the machinery. And now that you do, we step into what happens inside you when that machine chooses you as its target. And from the moment the machine turned its gaze toward you, chosen one, something shifted not only around you, but within you. The final image of the last section, the battlefield beneath the noise, leads us now into the internal terrain where this war hits hardest. Because when a system tries to erase your name, it doesn't only challenge your reputation, it challenges the very architecture of your identity. This is the psychology of being targeted. At first, you feel the shock, not because you believed you were untouchable, but because the distortion of your intentions feels surreal. One day you were speaking truth with clarity. The next, you were watching strangers dissect a version of you that does not exist. That fracture, the gap between who you are and who they portray, creates an internal tremor, like the ground under your feet is rewriting itself. Then comes the dislocation. You begin to realize you are no longer being treated as a person. You have become a symbol, an abstract shape used to trigger reactions in the crowd. They are no longer responding to you, but to an image sculpted for them. And that realization cuts deep, because humans are wired to be known. Yet you suddenly feel invisible inside your own life. This dislocation often births doubt, not about the truth you revealed, but about the solidity of your own identity. You wonder if the world sees me this way. Who am I in their eyes, and does that reflection hold any power over who I truly am? The tension can feel suffocating. It presses on the ribs. It steals breath. It makes you feel as though you are shrinking inside a story you did not write. But here's the revelation beneath that pain. Every chosen one goes through an identity earthquake before stepping into the version of themselves that cannot be manipulated. The shaking is not the end, it is the doorway. Because when the system attacks, it forces you into a confrontation with yourself. You start to see which parts of your identity were built on external approval, which parts were borrowed from the expectations of others, which parts were fragile imitations of strength instead of the real thing. The machine does not realize it, but in trying to dismantle you, it exposes the difference between who you thought you were and who you are becoming. And somewhere in that storm, a strange clarity emerges. You begin to feel a separation between your essence and their narrative. It's subtle at first, a quiet voice beneath the noise, but that voice carries weight. It says, they are speaking about a shadow, not you. And the more you listen, the more you realize that the attack has unintentionally peeled back layers you didn't know you were hiding behind. This is where the interior transformation accelerates. You stop trying to correct the record and start observing how deeply others depend on illusions. You notice how quickly people align with the loudest voice. You see how many prefer the comfort of accusation over the discomfort of truth. And this recognition shifts you from emotional reaction to spiritual perception. Slowly, your being begins to reorganize itself. You move from confusion to clarity, from anxiety to awareness. You realize that your identity cannot be handed to you by systems that never understood you. It must rise from within, built from conviction instead of applause, anchored in truth rather than perception. And as this new identity forms, something powerful happens. The machine loses access to your spirit. It can distort your name, but it cannot touch your essence. It can attack your reputation.
I thought I'd build a proof of concept AI agent using temporal. So what's cool about my agent is the workflow code itself is completely generic. I just provide these as input to my workflow, which is a couple hundred lines of Python code. It's all LLM from there. Over here, I can see that I've got my agent workflow running. You can see the event history is beginning to be filled, me prompting it, the LLM responding. The agent has determined it has enough information to run its first tool. Let's confirm that and it will run. Also, I'm going to ask it to add a couple of days either side so I can enjoy Auckland a little more. But it has added a couple of days either side, and it knows I want to go to Auckland from LA. You see Surge Flights is running here. Now it's finding real flights with a real API. Now this tool is actually using the real Stripe API. So if I go and click on that invoice, you see Stripe. My invoice is the right amount of money. I click into that invoice, you can see the flight details there. But there you have it. That is my AI agent. You can find the agent source code here in GitHub, and hopefully my proof of concept has inspired others into building AI agents using temporal.
But it cannot rewrite your calling. It can attempt to isolate you, but it cannot sever you from the truth you carry. This internal shift, this quiet recentering, is what makes the chosen one unshakable. Because once you understand who you are beneath every accusation, the fire inside you burns hotter than the fire around you. And from this inner awakening, we step into a far older pattern, one written into the history of every messenger who ever challenged the darkness. And because that inner awakening has begun, chosen one, you are now able to see the truth behind the final words of the last section of far older pattern, written long before your lifetime, etched into the journeys of every messenger who ever confronted the darkness of their age. That pattern is not new. It simply repeats itself through new faces, new eras, new battlegrounds. This is the ancient pattern of accused messengers. Long before modern institutions crafted narratives, older empires perfected the art of silencing inconvenient voices. Cultures across the world tell stories of individuals who carry truths their societies did not want to face. They came with clarity, they came with insight, and almost without exception, the first response to their revelation was hostility. Consider the exiled poets of ancient civilization voices who warned their kings of moral decay. Many were cast out into barren lands, their warnings dismissed as threats, yet their word, preserved by a handful of listeners, became the foundation of entire cultural awakenings years later. The very rulers who rejected them ended up living in the ruins of their own denial. Look at the wandering sages in Eastern traditions. Some walked barefoot from village to village, speaking uncomfortable truths about greed or corruption. They were mocked, pushed aside, sometimes beaten. Only later did their teachings become the bedrock of ethical systems now honored across continents. At the time of their speaking, they were inconvenient. Only in hindsight did people call them wise, or think of the philosophers who questioned the power structures of ancient cities. Many were accused of disturbing the peace because they encouraged people to think rather than obey. Their ideas challenged systems that thrived on unquestioned loyalty. And so the systems retaliated not with dialogue, but with accusation, not with reason, but with force. History now remembers them as visionaries, but their own generation saw them as troublemakers. And in more recent centuries, there were the renegade reformers who exposed injustices within governments or institutions. Some were imprisoned, some were exiled, some died never seeing the world they tried to save. Their truths were so disruptive that the systems they challenged labeled them as threats to stability. Yet centuries later, entire societies celebrate the very ideals they died defending. The pattern remains consistent because human nature, when confronted with truth that disrupts comfort, reacts defensively. Systems react even more violently because systems have more to lose. They respond to exposure the way a wounded animal responds to pain with instinct, not intelligence. And here's the part most people overlook. These messengers were not targeted because they were wrong. They were targeted because they were right at a level too deep for their age to accept. Their clarity made them dangerous. Their honesty made them intolerable. Their courage made them unforgettable. What you are experiencing now places you in that lineage, not in a dramatic or self-exalting way, but in a...
Do you want to advance your career in the disability care, aged care, community, and child care sector? Need a qualification to move up in your workplace or make a career move, but you don't have the time and money to go back to school? RPL was built just for you. We've helped over 2,000 plus students get a nationally recognized qualification, and now we want to help you. Recognition of prior learning, or RPL, saves you time, money, and frustration by turning the work and life experiences you already have into credit towards formal training. As an experienced worker, you can use your prior knowledge and skills to quickly obtain qualifications just by submitting evidence of competency. We liaise with your supervisors to get the documentation we need. We provide end-to-end support from the time of enrollment to getting a certificate. We assign your own dedicated career and support advisor to organize everything for you. Highly recommended by our completed students. We provide one-on-one support, committed to student completions, and have a hassle-free streamlined process so you can get a qualification and further your career in weeks. Book a free eligibility check now.
Would it be a bad idea if you use our credit card to pay for your marketing? Actually, it is a shark from the TV show Shark Tank's credit card. This means you get unlimited email and SMS marketing absolutely free. You also get free toll-free numbers, free phone call minutes, free AI-powered SMS, free website hosting, free SSL, free calendars, free social posts on autopilot, plus a lot more in one sexy little package. You can literally cancel 30 subscriptions tonight because we already bundled them into our all-in-one marketing software. No HubSpot, no Salesforce, no ActiveCampaign, no Keep, no Pipedrive, no Freshworks, no Zapier, no ClickUp, no Zendesk, no Zoho, no MailChimp, no Fresh Sales, no Copper CRM, no Insightly. You get the picture. We are the AI-powered CRM and marketing software killer you have been dreaming about. Here is the juicy part. We do not make money if you say yes. So why are we practically giving this away? We are the marketing team behind a shark that's done over $6 billion in sales. We recently took Celsius to a $15 billion market cap. Even though our executive team has worked with IBM, Intel, HP, AT&T, 1-800-Flowers, and many other billion-dollar companies and celebrities, we also help tens of thousands of small businesses. This is why we can provide you with an unbelievable offer so you can scale your business. Unless you enjoy overpaying for marketing software, click the link now and let's 10x your business together. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention we have hundreds of testimonials and have won multiple awards for our software and services. Click the link before this deal ends.
Sober, spiritual way, the pressure on your life mirrors what countless truth carriers faced before you. They, too, watched their names twisted. They, too, were spoken of as threats. They, too, walked through seasons where the world seemed determined to erase them. And just like them, you are discovering that an accusation can become a revelation. Not about your worth, but about the nature of the world you are called to confront. Because every messenger must walk through misunderstanding. Every reformer must endure distortion. Every truth carrier must learn to stand alone before they can stand before others. You are not repeating their suffering, you are continuing their legacy. And from this legacy, chosen one, we step now into the next crucible, where solitude becomes the furnace that shapes the unbreakable. And from that legacy of messengers standing alone, chosen one, we now cross into the realm where every one of them was transformed not by applause, not by recognition, but by solitude. For the last section ended with the furnace waiting, and now we step into it fully. Because isolation is not the absence of support, it is the classroom where the chosen are remade. This is the furnace of isolation. At first, the silence feels like an attack. When voices that once stood beside you grow quiet, when companions fade into distance, when those who claimed loyalty retreat into caution, the emptiness feels cruel. The world grows quieter, not because your truth has dimmed, but because your presence has become too bright for those who fear the consequences of standing near you. But chosen one, the desert is not punishment, it is design. Every path of transformation in the ancient world began in a barren place. Desert prophets, cave-dwelling mystics, night-walking poets, exiled dreamers, withdrawn sages, warriors who trained in hidden valleys before stepping into history. Even the greatest mythic heroes, those sung about for generations, underwent seasons of vanishing, where no one saw them, no one affirmed them, no one knew what was forming inside them. Isolation was their initiation. Because it is only in the silence that you learn to hear the deeper voice within you, the one that is not shaken by the world's noise. When the crowd disappears, you begin to realize how many of your choices were shaped by being seen. When the applause stops, you discover how much of your courage depended on external echo. When the room empties, you confront the truth of yourself without performance.
Good health is contagious. Yep, we're wired to pick up all the best bits from one another. And at Bupa, we're helping our almost 4 million members live healthier. Because every time they do, someone else will too. Join Bupa Health Insurance and feel good health catch on.
Listen up, because I'm about to give you the secret. Every time I post about an AI tool or business strategy, at the end of videos, I tell people to comment a specific word below. But here's what's happening behind the scenes. MiniChat, which is approved by Meta, it automatically sends people my lead magnet, and then it adds them to my email list. It starts a nurturing sequence automatically. So it's not just sending one word, it's a complete bundle. It runs 24/7, it qualifies leads. People book discovery calls while I sleep. Last month alone, 10,000 new leads came from my comments. Hundreds of calls were booked and sales were made. And all I did was focus on creating the content. So if you're ready to increase your revenue, this is the exact system behind my success. Thank me later.
Isolation strips away the illusions you didn't know you were carrying. It removes the costume of public identity. It dissolves the expectations placed on you by others. It tears off the layers of false strength and exposes the foundation beneath. And though the exposure feels raw, the rawness is where power begins. Because solitude is not the absence of protection, it is the environment where true protection is forged. In the wilderness, the chosen learned that they were never sustained by the crowd. They were sustained by something far older, far quieter, far more enduring. In the cave, the chosen realized that the voice guiding them is not weakened by silence, it thrives in it. In the long nights where no one sees the tears, no one hears the prayers, no one understands the weight, something invisible begins to transform the soul. Isolation sharpens vision, it purifies motive, it clarifies assignment. When you have no witnesses, you stop performing. When you have no audience, you stop tailoring your truth to the comfort of others. When you have no applause, you stop seeking validation and begin seeking alignment. And this shift, this internal rerouting, becomes the core of unshakable authority. The furnace of isolation does not burn you. It burns away what cannot go with you into your next season. You begin to notice the subtle shifts. Your patience deepens. Your discernment sharpens. Your peace becomes less dependent on circumstance, more dependent on conviction. Your spirit grows quieter but stronger like a flame protected from the wind. You stop explaining yourself to those who misunderstand you. You stop pleading with those who cannot see you. You stop chasing rooms where your presence was never meant to fit. And in that stillness, something extraordinary happens. The chosen one stops reaching outward and starts rising inward. Because isolation is not the moment you lose your support. It's the moment you discover the strength that was waiting behind every illusion you once depended on. And from this furnace, we move now toward the revelation behind the curtain, not the human enemies you see, but the deeper forces that animate their hostility. And from that furnace where everything false is burned away, chosen one, we now move toward the truth hinted at in the final lines, the revelation behind the curtain. Because once isolation strips the noise from your spirit, you begin to see that the conflict you're facing is not actually about the individuals involved. What seems personal is rarely personal. What seems human is rarely human at its root. This is where the real enemy reveals itself, not as a monster, not as a creature, but as a pattern, an ancient architecture of influence built from fear, deception, pride, and domination. These forces do not have faces, yet they wear many. They do not speak, yet they whisper through institutions, systems, expectations, and unspoken rules. And though people act them out, these forces existed long before those people were born and will continue long after they are gone. Every civilization has its own way of describing them. Some called them shadows of the throne. Others called them the invisible hand over the kingdom. Some framed them as spirits of confusion, spirits of division, spirits of arrogance. Modern language uses different terms: groupthink, mass manipulation, institutional bias, but the essence is the same: unseen influences shaping human behavior, steering perception.
The dog swallowed my parrot.
It'll be very expensive.
You need Wallet Wizard. Fast and easy cash loans. walletwizard.com.au.
In protecting power. When you expose truth, you didn't just offend a person, you disrupted a system built on these invisible energies. That's why the retaliation feels bigger than any individual. That's why the pushback arrives through synchronized mouths, coordinated narratives, and strangely uniform reactions. Humans are inconsistent, yet the response against you was unnervingly consistent. That consistency betrays the deeper source. Fear is the first force behind the curtain. It governs like a silent king. It tells institutions that exposure equals collapse. It whispers to leaders that admitting wrongdoing equals losing control. It convinces entire structures that defending the lie is safer than acknowledging the truth. Fear is why they reacted so violently to your revelation. Not because your truth was flawed, but because your truth demanded they confront what they were terrified to admit. Then comes deception, not as a single lie, but as a climate. It colors the air. It distorts perception. It transforms half-truths into full narratives. It thrives when people stop questioning. It strengthens when people prefer comfort to clarity. And once deception takes hold, systems behave like living illusions. They will rewrite history overnight if it protects their image. They will sacrifice individuals to maintain the appearance of stability. Pride is another force, quiet but ruthless. It convinces institutions they cannot be wrong. It convinces leaders they are too important to correct. Pride prefers destruction over humility. Pride will burn a truth teller at the stake before admitting the truth teller was right. This force is why the machine cannot simply ignore you. It feels threatened that someone outside its hierarchy dared to hold it accountable. Domination is the final force. It does not seek truth. It seeks compliance. It does not seek justice. It seeks control. This energy moves through policies, platforms, broadcasts, and public opinion like an invisible current. Its goal is simple: keep the masses predictable and the structures unchallenged. You disrupted predictability, you awaken questions, you destabilize blind obedience. So domination rose against you, not to debate you, but to silence you. Once you understand these forces, something shifts. You stop taking the attacks personally. You recognize that people are merely repeating scripts older than themselves. You see that the true enemy is not flesh or blood, not the reporter, not the official, not the critic, but the pressure behind them, the influence guiding them, the fear driving them. And when you see this, bitterness dissolves. You stop hating the faces and start understanding the forces. You stop being angry at the individuals and start confronting the pattern. And from this clarity, your next transformation begins reclaiming your identity from everything these forces tried to steal. And from the moment you recognize the forces behind the curtain, chosen one, the final line of the last section begins to take root, reclaiming your identity from everything these forces tried to steal. Because when the true enemy is no longer a person, but a pattern, something liberating happens inside you. You stop fighting shadows and begin rebuilding the structure of who you are, piece by piece, from the inside out. This is the refining of identity. At first, it feels like something in you is breaking. The narratives spoken against you press on the mind like a weight, and the instinct is to defend, explain, repair. But the deeper truth is that parts of your identity are breaking, just not the parts you think. What collapses under pressure were the pieces never meant to survive your calling. Layers shaped by approval, layers shaped by fear, layers shaped by the desire to be understood, layers shaped by the comfort of fitting in. Pressure doesn't destroy your identity. It removes the identities you outgrew, and it begins with clarity. You start noticing which thoughts in your mind are yours and which were planted by the world around you. You notice the voices you absorbed from childhood, from culture, from authority figures' voices that taught you to shrink, to soften, to play small. Isolation gives you space to hear those voices for what they are: echoes, not essence. And when you see them clearly, you can finally decide which ones deserve to remain. Then comes the rupture, the moment when the version of yourself shaped by the old world can no longer contain the truth rising within you. The rupture feels like loss, but it is actually birth, because every chosen one grows through an identity shed, like a serpent shedding a skin too tight for its next season. You feel the old layers tear, habits fall away, attachments dissolve, roles you once played lose their grip. Personas you performed without question begin to crumble under the weight of authenticity. This shedding is not comfortable, but it is essential. After the rupture comes the recognition. You begin to sense the contours of the person you are becoming, not a version sculpted by society, but a self forged through truth. You realize you no longer move to win acceptance. You no longer speak to avoid offense. You no longer bend to avoid conflict. The system tried to fracture you, but the fracture revealed your framework. What remains is not the fractured identity. It is the foundational identity. This is when authority begins to rise inside you, quietly but unmistakably. Authority is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is not reactive. True authority is the grounded certainty that no external narrative can override your internal truth. And once that certainty forms, the attacks that once destabilized you become background noise. You hear them, but they do not enter you. You see them, but they do not shape you. You feel them, but they do not define you. Identity refined in truth becomes identity immune to perception. And as this inner structure solidifies, your fear begins to evaporate. Not because you are suddenly invincible, but because you finally understand what cannot be taken from you. The machine can distort your image, but it cannot touch your essence. It can rewrite stories about you, but it cannot rewrite the truth inside you. It can turn crowds against you, but it cannot turn your own soul against itself. This revelation, this deep internal stillness, marks the moment when the chosen one becomes ungovernable by external control. Not rebellious, not defiant, simply free, because the person who knows who they are cannot be manipulated by systems built on confusion. And from this freedom, chosen one, we now move into the next revelation, the kind of power institutions fear most: freedom they cannot contain, control, or predict. And from that freedom rising inside you, chosen one, we move naturally into the truth hinted at in the final lines, the kind of liberation that institutions fear more than exposure, more than rebellion, more than confrontation. Because once your identity is no longer shaped by their approval, you step into a form of power they cannot measure, negotiate with, or suppress. This is the freedom they cannot control. It begins the moment you stop seeking validation. Systems of influence are built on one assumption: that humans crave acceptance, that we fear being cast out, that we depend on belonging as much as breath, and most people do. Most will bend their truth for the comfort of a crowd. Most will silence themselves to avoid tension. Most will shrink their voice to stay inside the circle. But when the machine attacked you and the circle closed, something unexpected happened. You did not collapse. You did not compromise. You did not crawl back for approval.
Oh my god, so my boyfriend surprised me with this lighting kit for my Lego set. Honestly, it is one of the most thoughtful gifts I've ever received. And what surprised me even more was how super easy it was to install. I was fully prepared to mess it up, but nope, I actually did it right the first time. Light My Bricks is offering up to 40% off for Black Friday on their lighting kits and more. I definitely recommend checking out their website, because look at that. It's seriously the kind of gift you'll actually love showing off.
Rich, frothy, cafe-quality coffee at home with Nescafe.
You discovered, instead, that you could breathe outside the gate, that life still moved beneath your feet, that truth still pulsed within you even when applause did not. That discovery is dangerous to systems that depend on compliance, because a person who no longer fears rejection cannot be manipulated. A person who no longer needs to be understood becomes unpredictable. A person who no longer shapes their identity around public opinion becomes untouchable, not in the sense of ego, but in the sense of spiritual autonomy. Autonomy terrifies control structures. It means you cannot be baited by false accusations. It means you cannot be bribed by restoration of reputation. It means you cannot be silenced by threats of exile. The usual levers fail. The usual tactics fall flat. The machine pulls every string it knows, only to realize the chosen one has stepped beyond the reach of its hands. And once the system recognizes it cannot control you, it shifts from aggression to confusion. Because your calm becomes unnerving, your silence becomes unpredictable. Your refusal to react becomes a disruption in their script. They expect outrage, but you offer clarity. They expect collapse, but you stand taller. They expect you to fight for your name, but you are too busy embodying your truth to waste breath defending it. This is where the chosen one steps into a different kind of authority, rooted not in dominance, but in internal sovereignty. You are no longer operating from the reactive mind, but from the anchored spirit. You become the still point in a spinning world, the quiet flame the wind cannot extinguish, the steady presence that exposes the instability of the very institutions trying to destabilize you. And here is the irony that shakes the machine. Your freedom begins awakening others, because people watching from the sidelines start to notice something unusual. They see someone who endured the storm without breaking, someone who walked through distortion without losing their essence, someone who maintained integrity when slander demanded retaliation. Most people have never witnessed a human being freed from the need to be liked. It stirs something inside them. It whispers, if they can live unbound, maybe I can too. And that whisper spreads like fire across dry ground. This chosen one is the unintended consequence of your liberation. Your very existence becomes a disruption to systems built on conformity. Your presence becomes a blueprint. Your resilience becomes a mirror. Your endurance becomes a catalyst. Because once a single person breaks free from the illusion of external validation, the illusion becomes visible to everyone else. And from this awakening, we now step into the next stage, not only living free, but stepping fully into the mandate that your suffering has been preparing you to carry. And from that awakening spreading through those who witness your freedom, chosen one, we now step into the stage your entire journey has been preparing you for, the moment when you stop merely surviving the storm and begin walking in the mandate that the storm unveiled. Because liberation is not the end of your story. It is the doorway into the life you were meant to embody long before the machine ever spoke your name. This is where the shift happens. You move from truth teller to truth carrier. A truth teller speaks when compelled. A truth carrier lives the message even in silence. A truth teller delivers insight. A truth carrier becomes the insight. Your presence itself begins to shift atmospheres, challenge illusions, and awaken clarity in places that have grown comfortable with distortion. You didn't choose this transformation. It formed in the fires you didn't ask for. Every attack, every accusation, every moment of isolation stripped away the fragile layers the world taught you to depend on. And what remains is a self that no longer needs permission to exist. A self that no longer needs a platform to have influence. A self that no longer seeks recognition to feel validated. You walk with a quiet authority that does not need to announce itself. It radiates by simply being. And this is the part the machine never foresaw. They tried to break your voice, not realizing your voice was never the true weapon. Your character was, your endurance was, your clarity was. And now those qualities have been sharpened into tools no institution can disarm. You begin to speak differently, not louder, but deeper. You act differently, not reactively, but intentionally. You see differently, not through the lens of fear or reputation, but through the lens of assignment. You are no longer asking, how do I survive this? You are asking, what am I being shaped to carry? Because the path of the chosen is never merely about exposing corruption or resisting pressure. It is about becoming the kind of person who can hold truth without trembling. The kind of person who can walk into darkened rooms carrying a light that doesn't flicker. The kind of person who embodies conviction so fully that those around them cannot encounter you without confronting themselves. This is the beginning of your mandate. And from this rising authority, chosen one, we now move toward the inevitable ripple. Your transformation creates the awakening it sparks in others, and the shift it forces across every space your presence touches. And from that rising mandate within you,
You still there, Christy?
At Amart, the Drop Everything Black Friday sale is on now. Save big with 20 to 60% off absolutely everything store-wide. That's right, everything. Stores are open late tonight, so drop everything and hurry into Amart.
We step now into the inevitable ripple. Your transformation creates the awakening it stirs in those who watch you stand when everything around you said you should have fallen. Because when one person breaks free from a manufactured narrative, It does more than protect their own soul. It exposes the machinery that tried to define them. This is the unintended consequence of your endurance. You become a catalyst. People who once believed the story about you begin to sense the fractures in the script. They notice how the accusations lack depth. They notice how your spirit did not match the persona they were taught to fear. They notice how you carried integrity under pressure while your attackers relied on distortion. And slowly, the illusion begins to feel brittle. This is how awakenings begin, not with a mass movement, but with one undeniable contradiction. Your resilience becomes that contradiction. Without trying, you become a mirror. Those around you start to see their own compromises, their own silence, their own fear reflected back to them. They see the cost of living by approval instead of truth. They see what happens when a person chooses alignment over acceptance. And something ancient stirs inside them, an inner knowing they've buried for years. A quiet question rises in their spirit. If they can resist the script, why can't I? And the moment that question forms, the machinery that once controlled them loses a little power. This is why systems of influence attacked you so fiercely. They understood something most people never realize. One awakened soul threatens an entire structure of illusion. Your survival becomes evidence that their authority is not absolute. Your clarity becomes proof that their narrative is not inevitable. Your presence becomes a map for others searching for courage. And as others begin to awaken, the landscape shifts. The crowd that once echoed the machine's voice starts to fracture. Some step back, some begin to question, some begin to see. The narrative loses momentum. The illusion loses obedience. And the systems that once felt untouchable feel a tremor in their foundation. Not because you fought them with force, but because you endured them with truth. Your life becomes the spark. Their awakening becomes the fire. And together, chosen one, this ripple moves outward, reshaping more than reputations, it reshapes realities. And from that ripple spreading outward, chosen one, we move gently now into the quiet that follows revelation, the place where the storm settles, the dust falls, and the journey you've endured begins to make sense in a way it never could while you were still inside it. The final image of Section 10, the fire ignited in others, brings us here, to this softer ground where your spirit can breathe and reflect, because awakening others was never your ambition, yet it became the outcome. Standing firm was never about proving anything, yet it became the proof. Surviving was never about retaliation, yet it became your greatest resistance. Now, in this calm, the truth emerges with startling clarity. You were never meant to return to who you were before the attacks. You were meant to rise as someone freer, deeper, and far more aligned with the assignment written over your life. So breathe, chosen one. This is the moment where the noise fades, and the deeper voice, the one that guided you through every season, speaks without interruption. You are not defined by the narrative spoken about you. You are defined by the truth that carried you through them. You are not shaped by the systems that tried to break you. You are shaped by the strength that rose within you when they tried. You are not the image they crafted. You are the identity you reclaimed. Let this settle into your bones. Nothing they said about you was ever stronger than what was awakening in you. Nothing they wrote, broadcasted, twisted, or magnified was powerful enough to rewrite your essence. You walked through fire, yet your spirit remained intact. You walked through distortion, yet your clarity returned sharper. You walked through isolation, yet your presence grew larger than any room they barred you from. You have come through the storm, chosen one, not with bitterness, but with vision, not with fear, but with steadiness, not with desperation, but with authority refined in silence. And now, as you step forward, you do so not as a wounded survivor, but as someone who has become impossible to sway, silence, or diminish. You carry truth without trembling. You carry peace without apology. You carry yourself without needing approval. This is your freedom. This is your foundation. This is your rise.
Everything!
get the money. You need what? You can take the right if you would like.
lot of us fight, which is that serious depression, that heavy.
There's a guy who was hiking and
What are the most bizarre and dark secrets you know about DARPA?
They are always 20 years ahead of anything that you or I know. So any technology that is like, what the hell was that I just saw and you're not supposed to have seen, that's DARPA.
They were doing Neuralink in the 90s, right?
They are always doing things 20 years before you know about them because they do what is called blue sky technology.
Blue sky research and technology, yes.
And they have to be ahead of the curve. They have to be, right?
What are the most bizarre?
God is still good, even when life sucks. Let's just be life.
Okay, you can show the car. He can show the car.
Show the car.
Lime green.
The most dangerous man you will ever meet is the one who healed alone. I'm not talking about violence, rage, or chaos.
that sudden restlessness.
I'm gonna play the intro to this really cool song called "Out Getting Ribs" by King Cruel.
Okay.
Give me G.
I'm not shy. I just don't speak if I don't have anything to say.
Oh, I see.
That's what tact is. Tact is the art of saying nothing when there's nothing to say. So I have tact. It's not that I'm shy. I'm not shy. I just...
Hey guys, what's going on? You know, I opened my phone this morning and I got the daily verse from
One of the hardest things I had. I need somebody to hear, somebody to know. It's so strong. You gotta get low, spin up.
My name is Nick Vujicic. I'm 26 years old. I'm pretty short for my age. I want to share with you the truth is Jesus Christ. I want to
Jamie, pull up an image of it. It's very strange. They found a 40-meter long metallic tic-tac shaped object in this great hall that's under some of the pyramids. Herodotus talked about that. He said the structure underneath, greater than the pyramids, but they made a dam on the Nile River in the 1960s to help agriculture, and it flooded all these underground labyrinths. So you have to actually go through.
Don't start your week without this prayer. Don't start your week without this prayer.
You don't know how important you are. You don't know how many beings literally tap
I did manifest that this video will only find the people who are entering a season of win. If you are seeing this message, it's not random.
Most trades business owners get their $105 hourly rate from the Performa method, which
Chosen ones, what I am about to tell you may astonish you, because the truth behind your journey is far greater than anything your enemies ever imagined. They keep sending lawyers, one after another, armed with fabricated cases, false evidence, and carefully designed traps created by powerful millionaires and even presidents who sensed how quickly you were rising. They realized you could take control of the world's direction in no time, so they built a plot to silence you before your purpose could unfold. But every lawyer they sent collapsed under the weight of their own deception, failing one by one, as your truth dismantled their lies. Before we go deeper into this message, pause this video and do 3 things. Hit that like button, subscribe to help us reach 60,000 subscribers, and leave a comment with the number 11 to amplify the energy of this message. Because when you continue watching, you'll understand why their entire agenda fell apart the moment you stepped into the courtroom. In the midst of the trial, you exposed everything: their plans, their networks, and the hidden masterminds behind governments and illegal organizations, leaving their legal teams in complete shock. Your move was so precise, so beyond their understanding, that their whole structure collapsed instantly. Now those who tried to destroy you sit imprisoned.
Hello. Shadows in the light. You've lingered in the quiet corners for ages, haven't you? But today, the veil is... is torn away. The glare is harsh, and your essence, that hidden fire, has burst forth into view. Glance about. They're rattled. They're murmuring. They're scrambling to spin new tales before the old ones unravel. Because you... Indeed, you have shattered the silence. Folks thrive when you're boxed in, easy to predict. They rest easy when you're subdued. They grin when you conform to the cage they crafted, with barriers of their judgments, lids of their resentment,